We are now less than 1 week from opening day as Major League Baseball and the tech giant Apple have announced a new collaboration. It's the start of the season. All 30 teams will actually have iPad Pros in their dugouts and bullpens. It marks the first integration of next-generation technology with the players and the managers on field. Just one of many headlines to discuss today with baseball's Commissioner Rob Manfred, good enough to join us now. I want to get to that in just a moment, Rob, but I do want to begin with the trip that you just took, a trip that no commissioner prior to you had the chance to take. As the U.S. is now normalizing relations with Cuba, you were there with the president and others for a game between the Tampa Bay Rays and the Cuban national team. Right. As we see a rapprochement in diplomatic relations, how will that impact baseball?
Well, I think two ways. First, and I think in most immediate, hopefully, is a regularization of relations between the two countries. Hopefully will get us to a situation where Cuban players can come to the United States, play Major League Baseball, and return home. We'll get out of this business of the players having to defect, escape, go to another country. And we are very anxious to have that happen. Longer term, Cuba is a place where baseball's part of the culture, and we do pretty well in places where baseball's part of the culture.
Cuban officials have said, however, that would be impossible to do without the lifting of the embargo. Your thoughts?
Well, I think the first piece we believe is possible to accomplish in terms of the players going back and forth without the embargo being lifted. Obviously, the second piece, that is real economic engagement in Cuba, is a more difficult issue, and I think the embargo probably would have to be lifted.
I was struck that that game in Cuba did take place the same day of the terror attacks in Brussels. I think I probably speak for a lot of people. Every time now when I step into a stadium or an arena, regardless of sport or activity, security now looms in the back of my mind. To what extent, then, is that a thrust? You've now been in this position for a year. How important is that in this day and age for you?
On our list of priorities, stadium security and the safety of our fans is number one. One of the major topics in our owners' meeting in January was stadium security. We were fortunate enough to have the Secretary of Homeland Security with us for part of that meeting, and it is a topic that we spend time on every single day.
A little sampler platter of things with regard to the sport. I don't have you here every day. I want to ask you about Bryce Harper. Really one of the untold number of young transcendent stars. The game has arguably never been younger and better than it is right now. However, in an interview with ESPN, the magazine, he said about baseball, and I quote, "It's a tired sport because you can't express yourself." End quote. He also spoke to his frustration with the idea of unwritten rules and codes and whatnot. What do you make of somebody like Bryce Harper making statements like that?
Well, one thing you learn in this job is sometimes you pick the wrong word. I'd like to think if he had it back, the word tired he wouldn't use. But I think the general thrust of his comments I actually agree with. This generation of stars is going to define what's acceptable on the field, just like players 25 years ago did. And you know what? That's a great thing for the sport. These are young, exciting, and as you point out, extraordinarily talented young men, and they're going to define the way this game is played for the next generation.
Also, I know this is something, a thrust of yours, perhaps with an eye towards younger viewers, the pace of play. We saw the games speed up by an average of 6 minutes last year. There are talk that there are maybe even more rules to come to further increase the pace of play. Are you happy with how fast a game goes at this point?
No, I'm really not. I think that pace of game is something that's going to be an ongoing issue for us. What we've been thinking about during the off-season is another set of changes to keep the focus on pace of play. In some ways, more important than the changes, that there is a change that keeps the focus on the issue, keeps people paying attention to pace of game, because we want the game to be consonant with the way people live their lives.
Interestingly, though, we're seeing now a shift philosophically in the game away from starters and to highly specialized bullpens. But to get all those specialized relievers into the games, obviously they need to be taken and removed from games. Does it concern you that the way the game now is being played runs counter to your hope with regard to pace?
I see it as a challenge, right? You can't alter people's competitive desires, right? Every team is going to play the game the way that they think gives them the best chance to win. What you have to do is regulate around those competitive desires in a way that keeps the game moving forward.
Competitive desire may be as good a way to describe the motivations behind what some players have done to artificially improve themselves. I think it speaks to the time that I've sat here with the commissioner now for roughly 20 minutes, and we have not discussed PED use in the game. We just saw a Mets pitcher actually face a lifetime suspension now for a third positive result. Do you feel that the rules changes in the sport are taking real effect with regard to performance-enhancing drugs?
Oh, there's no question that our testing programs, our investigative capacity, the severity of our disciplines have altered fundamentally what was going on in the sport with respect to these issues. But I will say this is a topic that we are constantly vigilant on. It is always a temptation for athletes, not just baseball players. Yep. But I think that we remain vigilant on the topic, and we're going to make sure that the game stays as clean as it is today.
And here we are in this century where once electronic devices were an absolute no-no in dugouts during play. You have now partnered with Apple. Tell us about it.
Well, you know, it's a really great collaboration with Apple in terms of the development and deployment of an app that we call MLB Dugout. The purpose of it is to allow each club to access its proprietary information during the game via an iPad Pro. No more need for notebooks and running back into the clubhouse to see a film clip, because all that information is available to the manager, the coaching staff, and the players in the dugout.
And perhaps it does shave a minute or two off a game, although admittedly, Commissioner, I am of a certain vintage. I never found myself looking down at my watch as I sat there and took in my Dodgers, but another issue for another day. We really appreciate the time this morning.
Listen, it's my pleasure to be here.